So you want to get better. And so how do you do that? What do you compare yourself to? How do you know better is better? Well, you must have some comparison, right? When I was a kid, I was quite involved with the YMCA, and as a young 13, 14-year-old kid, I would go in through to the locker, and there was a guy sitting at the desk, we called it the tote desk, and he always had people gathered around talking with him, and he was the cool guy at the Y. I figured that's where I wanted to be. That's my comparison. And that was just happened one time or another. I was 13 or something. And then years later, when I had become a leader at the Y, I was a lifeguard. I led one of the volunteer organizations there. I was quite involved, heavily involved in the Y. And I was sitting behind the tote desk. And one day I woke up and I realized, looked around and I saw, hey, people are standing around talking with me and people are going in and out. I'm now the cool guy at the Y, just like I wanted to be when I was 13. And so I compared myself when I was 13 to this guy, and now I was the guy. And I felt really, really good about that. Shortly thereafter, though, I started getting involved in an entrepreneurial group, and we'd have a meeting every once in a while. And some guys were really growing. They were excited about their businesses and things were taking off, and mine wasn't. And so I suddenly didn't feel very good about myself anymore. Now think about this. 2 weeks or so before, I was the cool guy at the Y, big guy, I was it. And now I was not the guy. And I wasn't the guy anymore at all. I was just some schmuck who thought he could start some kind of sales business and wasn't very successful at it. The challenge was I wasn't comparing myself to the right people, right? So who do you compare yourself? Who's the best person to compare yourself to? Well, in those two cases, one case, I was comparing myself, the cool guy at the Y, to everyone else's worst, right? I was it. I had people talking with me. I had, all the accolades of, being in charge of the area. And I just felt all that because I was, involved and people wanted I was the guy to come to. So everybody else, they didn't compare. Whereas when I went to the meetings, suddenly there were people that were doing much better than me. And when I compared myself to them, I compared my worst to their best, which is totally opposite to what you should be doing, right? You don't want to compare your worst to their best. You don't know what their situation is. You don't know what is actually happening in their lives. So those are the two cases. If you compare yourself to somebody else, then you're comparing yourself either your best to their worst, or their best to your worst. Either case, you don't come out ahead, because in one case, well, let's see. In one case, if you're feeling better, then you have a feeling of superiority, which doesn't make you feel like you need to move forward because you're the best. Second, you become lackadaisical. You think you're good already. You don't have to strive to become anything better because you're the top. And finally, you get you stop focusing on improving yourself, because if you're the top, then you don't need to improve, right? So think about that perspective. If you're the guy, then you don't need to try. You just are the guy. You don't try. And therefore, you don't continue to get better. And because you don't continue to get better, shortly thereafter, you're not the guy anymore. So comparing your best to their worst is not a good idea. Then, if you are feeling the other side, that other people are succeeding and you're the schmuck at the bottom, then you're comparing their best to your worst, and you become depressed, right? Because you don't think you can succeed because look at how great they are, and I'm no better. I can't change. I am who I am, and that's, I'm never going to get there. You have a feeling of inferiority. You don't feel like you're as good as them. And finally, if you're right at the bottom, then your efforts are futile. Why try? If I'm at the bottom, I'm never going to get to the top, right? And it's true, you're never going to get to the top. No one is ever at the top. There's always somebody that's better than them at something. So, who should you compare yourself to? The only person you can ever compare yourself to accurately is who you were yesterday. That's it. Because that's the only person that is close enough to you to compare. Now, you aren't the same person you were yesterday, contrary to what you think. You have changed in some way. You've had some experience, you've learned something, you're older, you've had, whatever it is, there's something that has changed from between when you are who you are now to who you were yesterday. So this is an option for you, or ability for you to compare yourself. If you can compare yourself because now it's useful. Yesterday I did this, and now I can do this. There's a point of reference. You know where you were, and you know where you are now, and you can measure the distance, the difference between the two. Let's see, you can do something about it too, right? If you're comparing yourself to somebody else, then you might have a great week. You come back next week and you think, I really hit it this week. But then the other guy, he hit it this week too, and he's way, way ahead. You can't control that. Or if you're the guy on the top, right, then if you have a great week, then somebody else, it doesn't matter because you're the guy, and it doesn't matter how good you are, the guy below you doesn't really count, right? So comparing yourself to who you were yesterday, you can say, hey, I made this change, and this change fixed this problem or made this problem, and so therefore you have the ability to control it. I brushed my teeth today, and tomorrow I can brush my teeth again, and I'm getting less cavities in the future, right? These are the concepts, the things you can change when you compare yourself to who you were yesterday. You can't compare yourself to who you are tomorrow because that's just wishful thinking. But you can compare yourself to who you were yesterday. All right, so who were you yesterday, right? What is it that you want to change between today and tomorrow? What are you going to work on, and what little action are you going to do so that you can go from where you are now to where you want to be? And the only way you can do that is comparing yourself to who you are now from where you were yesterday. Yesterday I was fat and old, and now I'm have a habit of getting out and going for a walk. So now therefore I'm getting thinner and healthier and younger. Not chronologically maybe, but feeling wise, right? So who do you want to become? And what tiny little habit can you do between now and your future self that will make it so that you can become the person you want to become? Then you can compare yourself tomorrow to who you were yesterday and see if it's actually making a difference.